Today is our first, what I would call a prioritization slate of the year. And what that means is you got to decide, where do your priorities lie for today? Do you want to spend up for Clayton Kershaw, who had 13 strikeouts, nearly a perfect game in his first start this year? Or do you want to load up on Coors Field? Go with the Philadelphia Phillies, who are there facing Chad Kuhl in a good spot where you really do want to go. But with Kershaw at $11,000 and the Phillies being high salaried at Coors Field as well, you kind of got to pick. You can't have both. You can get some one-offs and stuff like that, but you can't stack the Phillies in full while having Kershaw. So you got to choose pitcher or stack. And typically, I'm going to lean towards the pitcher in these scenarios, but I think today might be a bit different. So let's dive on in and get you set for Monday's slate. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberfire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberfire.com, here to break down Monday's 9-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 p.m. Eastern for today. And there is some weather in the forecast for today, specifically on the East Coast. Rain is very likely in DC for the Diamondbacks and Nationals. I think this game is probably going to get rained out, so I would not make plans around players in that game. If you want to go there, which you might, just make sure you are around towards lock to make sure you can pivot if that game does get rained out. There is a chance of rain in New York for the Mets and the Giants, though looks like it'll arrive later. So that game will start, and you should be okay, but I check back on that one later to see the timeline of the rain there. It's also 47 degrees, so if it does play, which it should, I would downgrade batters there. Finally, in Chicago, for the Cubs and the Rays, temperatures just 39 degrees, so downgrade hitters there as well for, again, the Cubs and the Rays. We'll break down the pitching preview for today in just 1 second, but first, a quick reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, where we have NHL, MLB, UFC, PGA, and NASCAR podcasts all in the same place, in the same feed. So if you hit subscribe, you will get all those to your feed right as they're posted to give yourself maximum time to get your research in, decide if you like what we're saying, and get your lineups in for the day. No PGA podcast for this week because it is a match play event, or a team event, so nothing there, but we'll have the rest of the stuff here on the feed for you to get you set for another week of DFS. Hey, sports fans, FanDuel is now offering an exciting twist to the beloved same-game parlay. Introducing Same-Game Parlay Plus, which allows you to combine same-game parlays across multiple games. All you have to do is head over to the FanDuel Sportsbook and navigate to the Same-Game Parlay tab of the first game you're interested in. Select multiple bets from the first game and then plus it up. Now you can add more bets from other same-game parlay labeled games. Head over to the FanDuel Sportsbook today and opt into the Same-Game Parlay Plus. Must be 21 plus and present in eligible states. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit FanDuel.com/RG. In Connecticut, ccpg.org/chat or 1-888-789-7777. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Louisiana, 1-877-770-STOP. In New York, text HOPE-NY or 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. In Tennessee, call the Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Or in West Virginia, 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Pitching preview for this Monday main slate. Clayton Kershaw is the highest salary pitcher on the slate, checking in at $11,000. We got Frankie Montas at $9,900. Sean Manaea, $97,000. Aaron Nola is $9,500. Shane McClanahan is $92,000. Tyler McGill is $9,000. Then we have Alex Cobb, Kyle Hendricks, and Michael Lorenzen as the others at $8,000 or higher. Now, for tonight, I want to stack the Phillies, and they're a Coors Field, which means I have to be super salary sensitive at pitcher. And that's going to push me towards Frankie Montas over Clayton Kershaw for tonight, because it is a $1,100 discount for Montas down from Kershaw. And I like Montas's matchup more than Kershaw's. He's facing the Orioles. Kershaw gets the Braves. That clearly favors Montas there. The Orioles have a 25% strikeout rate against righties based on their current active roster since the start of last year, whereas the Braves are at 20%. I also do like how Montas has looked to start this year. His strikeout rate is 26%. That's not like elite by any means, but it came in two super tough matchups against the Phillies and the Rays, and both those games were on the road. Now, Montas goes back home. Outside of the strikeouts, Montas has been awesome this year. He has a 2.69 skill interactive ERA in those games with a 2% walk rate. His batted ball data is very good, and it's a carryover of what Montas did last year. He also had a 16% swinging strike rate in those 2 games as well. I think the strikeouts will come from Montas soon, and I would not be shocked if that were to happen tonight against the Orioles. I think that it's a very likely situation that it does happen. So he is lower for me than Kershaw straight up. But if you're going to give me $1,100 to scatter across Coors Field and a stack of the Phillies, I will take that and go with Montas as my top pitcher for tonight. Salary is also a motivating factor for my second pick at pitcher, and that's Shane McClanahan. He is $9,200, and I think that's too low for where he's at. He is in a good matchup, too. He's facing the Cubs, who have a 25% strikeout rate against lefties, with just a 33% fly ball rate. And that's a big thing, that low fly ball rate, because McClanahan does let up, I would say, too much hard contact. And we can be less concerned about that when the ball's not in the air. And I think against the Cubs, we'll see more ground balls. That's a good thing for McClanahan. Also, we see McClanahan be pretty good at keeping the ball on the ground, too. 29% fly ball rate, so he doesn't let the ball up in the air too often. When he does, it can be a bit concerning. In the 2 starts this year, McClanahan is leaning big on his curveball, and he's thrown that pitch 34% of the time across those 2 starts. That's a very good sign if we want strikeouts, because last year McClanahan had a 42% whiff rate on that pitch, according to Baseball Savant. The ex-WOBA against it was 244. It was his best pitch. He just didn't throw it enough. But it seems like he is changing that this year. It seems like he has recognized that that curveball is a weapon, and he is using it to his advantage. Now, McClanahan in those 2 starts has not been overly sharp because he's not completed 5 innings yet. But that's not due to pitch count, at least not the second one. The first game, 68 pitches. That's pretty low. Second game, though, 85 pitches, which means I think we can project McClanahan to go 90 for tonight if he is effective. And in this matchup, I think there is a very good chance that does wind up happening. So McClanahan, $9,200. I think he's very much worth a look. Again, trying to save some salary, give ourselves more flexibility to get up to the Phillies in that Coors Field stack. Now, among the value plays for tonight, I think there's a pretty obvious one we want to focus on. That guy is Alex Cobb at $8,800. And I don't think that Cobb will be below $9,000 the next time he's on a slate. And that's because Cobb was filthy in his first start. The velocity on his sinker was rumored to be up during the spring, and it was. In his first start, he averaged 94.5 miles per hour on that sinker, according to Baseball Savant. It was 92.7 last year. His splitter was also up 89.6 this year versus 87.5 last year. And velocity is good, but you do want to see results too. We got the results because Cobb had 10 strikeouts across 5 innings, a 16.9% swinging strike rate. So he was filthy. And a big thing is that he did go pretty deep in the game. He threw 83 pitches, and I went into that game assuming that the pitch count for Cobb would be around 70. So he outperformed that for sure, which means that for today, I am okay upping his pitch count projection to 90 for this slate. And that's enough for us in DFS at this point in the year. Cobb is facing the Mets. They're not a big strikeout team against righties, just a 21% strikeout rate for them since the start of last year. But it is a cool temperature for tonight, just 47 degrees. That is in a park that already favors pitchers to begin with. So you give me a low temperature at this park, that's going to lead to good things from a pitching perspective. So I love what Cobb did in his first start, and I'm okay buying into that and making Cobb my top value play of the night. And he is one I will have in my player pool for sure, because I do think he has the strikeout upside to hang with guys like McClanahan, like Montas, like Kershaw, because of how good he looked in that first start. So as we transition now to the stacking section, kind of, spoiled this one before, but I do think the Phillies are a priority for me for tonight, even more so than pitching, which is not typically the way I want to play things. They're facing Chad Kuhl at Coors Field. Kuhl last year lost his spot in the rotation with the Pirates, and that's an indication that he wasn't throwing the ball super well. Now he's with the Rockies, though, and there's always a chance when a pitcher goes to a new pitching staff, he will figure something out that wasn't working for his previous stop. And Kuhl did lean heavily on his sinker in his first start this year. He held the Rangers scoreless, or just to 1 run, over 4 1/3 innings. So those are positives. New team, new environment, new pitching coach. He played well, got good results. The rest of the data was not as good, though. He walked a lot of guys. That was the main problem for Kuhl there. He had 4 walks to 5 strikeouts in 4 1/3 innings. He did let up some hard contact, too. He let up just 10 balls in play. Because a lot of walks, a lot of strikeouts. That's going to lead to a smaller sample here. But he did let up some hard contact there. 5 of the 10 balls in play were hard hit. The sinker did not lead to ground balls necessarily because he let up 4 fly balls to 4 ground balls and 2 line drives. So although the results were good, I'm not sure if we should expect that to continue as the sample expands. That's especially true when he's facing such a good offense at Coors Field. This Phillies team, as it's currently constructed, has a 219 ISO against righties since the start of last year. That is the highest mark on this slate, and now you're moving that out to Coors Field. So I know they'll be chalky, but I'm going to be aggressive with the Phillies here for today. The tough part is that aforementioned chalk dilemma, where they are going to be very popular. But you can get unique through using different combinations of batters. So, for example, JT Realmuto, Rhys Hoskins, and Kyle Schwarber all have first base eligibility. You will get lineups with 2 of those, with Realmuto, Hoskins, Realmuto, Schwarber, et cetera, but you won't get a ton of lineups that use all 3 at the same time with Schwarber in the outfield and at least one of those guys at the other utility slots. That does mean that you won't get to have one of Harper or Castellanos in there, but just as a general thought, I would give consideration to unique combinations when stacking this team. And I think that a pretty unique one would be having all 3 of Realmuto, Hoskins, and Schwarber, given that they have overlapping eligibility. People don't want to burn up that utility slot all the time. So I would say to me, that combination specifically, Realmuto, Hoskins, Schwarber, is a pretty fun one. And just think about that in general. Think of hitter combinations, ways to get creative when stacking a chalky stack. I think there are ways around it if you are willing to, get a bit creative and give additional thought to the way you want to build things out there. Moving to other stacks, even with the mid-range pitchers like Montas and McClanahan, we will probably need a value stack to pair with the Phillies here. And I think the A's could fit that. I know the A's suck, and they do. They got a 92 WRC plus against righties since the start of last year, and that's one of the worst marks in the slate. And it's also in Oakland. But the matchup here is perfect. They are facing Spencer Watkins, and Watkins back in the rotation after getting demoted last year. When he got demoted, he did start throwing fewer 4-seamers, and it's not a good pitch, so it makes sense he would scale back on that. And he's carried that approach over into this year as well, now that he is back in the rotation. But that approach is not working. In his first start this year, Watkins had 1 strikeout across 3 innings. He let up 2 walks. He let up 2 barrels across 13 balls in play and a lot of fly balls. That was against the Brewers. And I think the Brewers offense is better than the A's, but they're not some elite offense where you grade that start on a curve because of the team he faced. So yeah, the A's stink, but it's a great matchup and they can give us some salary savings. And I'm okay with taking that here because it allows me to get to the Phillies as my top stack for today. And nobody on this team has a salary higher than $2,800. Everybody here is a value play. One fun thing recently is that we've been seeing Sheldon Neuse get starts against righties. It's a small sample, but Neuse does have a 270 ISO against righties since the start of last year. Again, small sample, but he puts the ball in the air. He's batting 5th for the most part. So I think that Neuse, if he does play again for today, would be a good option for us in terms of getting some upside. Between him, Seth Brown, Sean Murphy, you've got 3 guys who can legitimately hit for some power against righties. So although the A's are not good, they've got some power, some legit power, and I'm okay with that for today. So the A's, although underwhelming, are a team I'm good with for today. I prefer to stick with a 3-player stack if I can, go with a 4-player Philly stack, 3 players in the A's, 1 off elsewhere. I think that could be a good approach for today. Now, if you want a stack that should go a bit more overlooked, to cancel out the chalk we have with the Phillies, I would check out the Angels. They're facing Luis Garcia, and Garcia is a good pitcher. He threw 4 shutout innings in his first start this year. But some of the peripherals are a bit odd right now, both now and at the end of last year. And this is something, again, that did start at the end of last year. In his debut this year, Garcia used his cutter just 10% of the time. That's down from 23% last year. He started to reduce the usage on that pitch over his final 9 starts last year. And in that 10-start sample, including the one this year, he's at a 5.01 skill interactive ERA. His fly ball rate is 38%, and he has allowed a 37% hard hit rate. So it's curious that he would keep up this approach. It didn't work that well last year. He spotted over into this year. Now, that last game where he had 4 shutout innings was against the Diamondbacks, and that was a team that could not make him pay. The Angels probably can. They have a 124 WRC plus against righties since the start of last year. That is the highest mark on the slate. They got a 203 ISO in that time. They're a good offense. And it doesn't seem like Garcia is fully on right now. So I think the Angels are a good stack for tournaments under the assumption people don't turn their way here because perception of Garcia is very good and they don't have the highest implied total for tonight either. So I think the Angels are pretty interesting for sure. It is worth noting, I'm assuming here that Mike Trout will not play because got hit by a pitch yesterday. So I'm probably not going to assume that he'll be in there. And that's a downgrade for everyone because Mike Trout positively impacts everybody in this lineup. We do, though, still have some quality options. Jared Walsh is $3,200. Anthony Rendon, $3,000. Brandon Marsh is $26,000. Joe Adell is $25,000 if he plays over Taylor Ward. But if Ward plays, he can also hit righties for power. So if he's in there, I'm fine with him as well. And if you use Ward or Adell plus Marsh plus Rendon or Walsh, you should be able to get to Shohei Ohtani with your Montas lineups. I think that can work. So I think the Angels will fly under the radar for today. Again, I'm assuming Trout will not go, and that is a downgrade for them for sure, but I do still like them. Despite that, in one of the warmer parks on a not great weather slate. Let's finish up here with things to watch for today. If you do not use the Phillies, I think that Kershaw would be my top option for today, despite a tough matchup at $11,000. And we did see him get yanked last week at 80 pitches. I had Kershaw projected for 75 based on how deep he had gone in the spring. So it made a lot of sense. I know people were mad, but you don't want to kill Clayton Kershaw in his first start of the year. So I had him projected for 75. He went 80. I'm fine bumping that projection up to 90 for this time around, which means I've got Kershaw projected for 7.87 strikeouts, despite a tough matchup. So if you've got the salary to get there, I'm into it. But just note that probably around 90 or so for tonight. It is a tough matchup. It is a high salary. So he's not my top guy. But if you like the Phillies less or just want to avoid the chalk, I think that Kershaw is still very much a fine option for today. I did not include the Nationals in the stacking section because there is a good chance that game is rained out. If it does play, the heavens open up. I'm okay with them. They're facing Madison Bumgarner. Good results this year, but the peripherals are super, super concerning. If that game does play, you got Lane Thomas as a great one-off or stacking option here. Cesar Hernandez, pretty good against lefties in terms of power. I'd be fine stacking them there, but again, I don't think that game will play for today. The other stack I find interesting here is the Brewers. They're facing Zach Thompson, and Thompson can struggle with fly balls at times. He's not the best at suppressing hard contact either. I do think he's interesting overall, and I think that he should get some strikeouts. I'm glad that they're having him start, but I think that I'd be okay taking the Brewers here. I prefer the Angels over them because the Brewers are not the best offense by any means, but the Brewers belong on this list in a good park for hitting for tonight. So I think the Brewers would prefer the Angels, prefer the A's over them, but the Brewers at least a consideration for me for today. All right. Dinger calls for this slate. Is it too boring to say Bryce Harper or Kyle Schwarber or Rhys Hoskins? Because I kind of want to say one of those guys. I'm going to go Harper. I know it's probably too boring even for the boring section, but I just like Bryce Harper. Kind of wanted to go deep for tonight. So we'll go Bryce Harper. Why not? I know it's boring, but my podcast, my rules. The fun one. We'll have more fun with this one. The fun one for today. The fun dinger call going back out to Oakland. So not the best park, but facing Spencer Watkins. Has some issues with batted balls. Let's go with Sean Murphy as the home run call for today. Don't get a lot of catchers in the dinger calls, but Sean Murphy has pop against righties for sure. As we know, he does against lefties as well. Not the worst park for hitting relative to this slate as a whole. So home run calls, Bryce Harper, very boring, but Sean Murphy a bit more fun. Hopefully helps make up for that for today. That is all that we have here for today on the Solo Shot. But once again, do not forget to subscribe to the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Wherever you get your podcasts, we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, you name it. You can find us there. And while you're there, if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. If you've got questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sonis. JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups. Hope you all had a happy and safe weekend, and we'll talk to you once again tomorrow to break down Tuesday's slate. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.